Welcome to the Beyond the KUOTES podcast, where I'll be sharing the stories of inspiring women with the hopes that this will empower you to believe in yourself and all that you are capable of achieving, and help you live a life that is truly authentic to you. Today I am so excited to welcome on Grace Williams to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm just going to start by giving a little introduction for anyone who doesn't know who you are. So Grace, for anyone who doesn't know, is truly one of the most incredibly inspiring women I have ever had the pleasure of meeting. Grace has navigated some of the most incredible challenges life can give us with such elegance and grace, and truly epitomises the strength that lies within every single woman. From navigating her own personal journey with MS to caring for both of her parents who were simultaneously diagnosed with cancer, Grace has such a beautiful ability to see the light in every situation and constantly choose the perspective of love in the face of adversity. Pivoting from a high-pressure career in corporate law to turn her pain into purpose and pursue her passion for holistic health, Grace is now a certified health coach, speaking on panels including the one and only Dior, and she is devoted to using her experience to help others find health and success in their own lives. The light that she radiates and the kindness that she shares is felt through every aspect of her work, and she is an inspiring reminder to all of us of the beauty that comes from choosing a life that is authentic to us. I'm so grateful that she's come on to share her story, and I know it will inspire everybody listening.
I could actually cry. That's possibly the kindest introduction anyone has ever said.
Honestly, there's so much I could have written about you. Obviously, we've only actually met a couple of times in person, but I feel like you're just one of those people who have just an aura of kindness.
Oh, thank you. That really means the world, because energy is so important, and so that really means the world.
Yeah, no, I think everybody who knows you would completely agree. Yeah, I know you're going to inspire so many people, because you've honestly inspired me so much. So before we get into all of your challenges and everything that you work in with holistic health, do you want to give a background in you, your life, and your aspirations growing up? What was little Grace like?
Do you know, when you asked this question, it really took me back, and I actually had to, I love journaling, I'm sure so many of your listeners do as well, but I really had to think about it, because, do you know what I came to? I didn't have many aspirations when I was younger, so I was one of those little girls that was very, do you remember, I don't know if you ever had this, when you sort of were with your friends, and the worst question you could ask me was, what do you want to do? Because I'd be like, I don't know what I want to do, what do you want to do? And whatever they said they wanted to do, I said yes to. And it really made me think, because I was I actually don't think I had big dreams or goals. So if the cool thing was to be in fashion, that's what I said I wanted to be in. If it was to be a ballet dancer, I mean, I loved doing ballet, but those were suddenly the things I was I want to be a ballet dancer, all depending on the people I was around.
Interesting.
And I found it so strange that it came up, because I was I haven't really thought about that before. And it really actually, I think, goes to show a lot of my personal journey of I needed to go through certain things in order to find my purpose, because I actually was living for everyone else's. And I think that goes back a really long way.
Oh my goodness, that's crazy, because actually from an outside perspective now, I'm Grace is so ambitious, and I'm sure she has so many dreams. So to hear that evolution of you, so that's so beautiful as well.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's such a, I've never really thought about it. And then when that question came up, and I was I really didn't have a clear thing of what I wanted to do at all. And I was always very academic, and so I guess school had always been my focus, and knew it was then going to be going to uni, and it was all about A stars, getting a first, that was very much my focus. And even when it came to thinking about a career, I didn't really know what I wanted to do at all. So yeah, it's been a journey.
Yes, I feel you've been through so many different chapters in your life already. So I know that you were studying law. Did you study law in uni, or just pursue law?
Pursued it after, so I studied history and then went into law. Yeah.
So what made you decide laws for me, and what was that life as a lawyer like?
Do you know, I always say I loved being a lawyer, which is a really strange thing, because people know the sort of demands of the industry, but I really did love it when I first went into it. So I studied history. I then took a year out after uni, and sort of, actually no, it was the summer when I was at uni, and then the last summer I had spent those summers working in Washington. Oh. And I was working in like a political lobbyist firm, but they were all trained as lawyers. I kind of liked the fact, I was like, oh, that's really interesting that they were all originally lawyers, but they're doing other things now. And I truly had no idea what I wanted to do. And I think it was sort of my dad that was like, well, they're all lawyers. Would you think about law? And history to law is a very like classic trajectory.
Yeah, lots of essays and...
Yeah. So I kind of fell into it, if I'm completely honest, of like, okay, yeah, that gives me like a bit of a plan because it's another 2 years of studying. Don't really have to like make much of a decision. But I applied for vacation schemes. The firm I ended up working at White & Case, I applied there. They were the first people I applied to, got the vacation scheme, got the training contract, and it just kind of snowballed from there of like, yeah, okay, let's do law. And then suddenly I was becoming a trainee and I was like a lawyer. And so it was and this I think is quite a big theme of like, life was just happening on autopilot and I wasn't really making decisions. But as I said, I loved being a lawyer. There was something, I think, because I'd always watched my dad, like growing up watching him like going to the city, going into work, the corporate life was a very exciting like status that I really liked, and it gave me quite a purpose and identity in the time of like, I get to wake up, like decide what I'm going to wear, I have my heels in the office, I have my commute in, and like I remember doing that commute and feeling like I'm an adult now and like feeling very at home in like what I was doing. I mean, the reality of law is not glam in any
It's not like suits. No. I love suits, and I thought the corporate world was going to, like, I thought I was going to be Meghan Markle.
Yeah, and like people did, and you know, you now look back and you realise the tops and the clothes that they wear in suits. I'm like, I know what it's like to be in the office until 2 a.m. No one is in a top with sleeves that big or like a skirt that's that uncomfortable. But there is something, it does glamorise it, and there are definitely like those really fun parts of being in a corporate career. But it is like it's so intellectual and it's so intense, and it's a world. Every industry is quite unique, but I think law is very unique in the sense of like just the expectations on like you don't need to sleep. Like you are supposed to be so on it with the attention to detail. We are literally meant to pick up every mistake that's in a contract, that's in a pleading, but we're doing that at 3 a.m. sometimes. And the sort of, you're like, this is a fascinating, like how we're meant to be functioning. But so it's there were a lot of highs and like really loved it from many perspectives, but there is also the reality of like, there are sleeping pods. I think this is changing now, but like there were sleeping pods. There are nights where you get in at 7 a.m. So there's that side of it as well that over time does take a toll, but I still loved being in it.
I like hearing that you actually did enjoy it, and it wasn't a case of like you hated every moment of it, but it's still okay, as I'm sure we'll get on to pivot, even if like you don't have to always hate something. But yeah, I still relate to that, and I actually love that you touched on you love the academic challenge of it, because I do think if you are super ambitious, like sometimes the corporate world gets demonized, but actually if you are ambitious and you have this like intellectual, like you create intellectual stimulation, like you can get a lot of that from that sort of environment.
And we've spoken about it of like, when you think about leaving the corporate world, that intellectual stimulation is so important because you take it for granted when you're in it, of like how much you're learning, how much you're developing, how much you're being tested. And it can seem really like, I just need to get out and I want to leave. But trust me, like a few months out of it, you want some of that back. And it is really interesting. Like, I think it goes to show that sometimes we get pushed too far. But there are so many, things I learned in law that actually the greatest asset that I use now in my business that like I would never have had before. Like that attention to detail is an amazing skill that I wouldn't have had if I didn't have my legal career, and I also wouldn't have had the understanding of what it's like to be in the world of corporates. But we demonize it, but actually there's really like positives to it, which I think people that are in it, it's like try and remember those little things that like got you there in the first place, because for any of these corporate careers, like I always say, you train, you apply, like there's so much work that goes into getting that, but suddenly once you get it, we lose that completely, and we sort of lose sight of what it is something you worked really hard for. So trying to bring an element of that back when the reality in any industry, and whether you're a founder, creative, we lose sight of that, but it's sometimes connecting back to that a little bit.
Yeah, and it's good to know that you know, sexual stimulation is important to you. So whenever you do if you do, pursue something separate, you know that you want to find that in that other path. And I do think you can find intellectual stimulation in a range, like anything, as long as you go out and try to find it.
I've now replaced, the last case I was on was to do with trains. I was a disputes lawyer, and it was on trains, and I learned every mechanism of how a train door works. Doing that at 2 a.m. is not as interesting as me now researching, say, the impact of nutrition on something, and I've sort of replaced what I'm studying. The research on how a train door works to now something I love. But I would not probably feel the love that I do for my work now if I didn't have that ability to be able to research and bring that intellectual stimulation into it on every level.
And it's nice that like now you can channel it towards something that you're so passionate about.
Yeah, trains not so much.
No, I can't imagine. It's like me in work, like looking at like industrial sheds.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, I love to be intellectually stimulated, not on industrial sheds.
Yeah, another one was shipping containers, and I was like, wow, like I now see a shipping container, I'm like, I know too much about this.
Imagine like that, it's just like, that would dull my stimulation. But yeah, so let's get on to this really pivotal time in your life. So do you want to talk about what you went through and what led you to, you know, like your time caring for your parents and how this experience went on to shape your life?
Yeah, so I think what's really, when I look back, what's so crazy is there have all been things that really take you take you by surprise, and you never think you're going to be faced by them. So the first one was when I was diagnosed with MS. I was 21, just after uni. Actually was going through the legal application process, and that diagnosis, suddenly you realize your body isn't working with you, and it's like you have these big goals, but you're sat in a doctor's office and they're telling you that they don't know what it's going to look like for you in the next 5 years time. And so that really threw me into okay, what am I doing and what can I do to look after myself? At the time, treatment wasn't on the cards. They didn't give it for sort of the level that I was at.
What sort of symptoms were you having?
So I basically lost all feeling in the left side of my body. And it started in my hand, it then moved to my foot. And I was working in a cafe at home at the time, in my year off. And I joked with someone, I was like, do you ever get it where pins and needles just stays for 2 days? And they were like, no. It's like, oh, okay, maybe this is a bit strange. And then I woke up one morning and it was the whole left side of my body. I came downstairs and my grandma was at home. And I was like, I'm having a stroke. It was floods of tears. Goodness. My mum just knew very quick. She was like, you need an MRI. And was very she was like, you're not having a stroke. And took me for an MRI. So I was very lucky. I got diagnosed very quickly. I mean, if anyone wants to laugh, the great thing was I bought a new pair of heels to wear for my vacation scheme at White & Case. And they were so painful because I hadn't broken them, because one of my foot was numb. I just didn't know. So I literally got through the 2 weeks being able to wear these heels because I couldn't feel my foot. So there was a blessing to it too. I broke the heels.
Trust you to find a blessing there.
But it was really okay, the doctor's telling me they don't know what this looks like and I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So that's what really pushed me into the world of health, basically, of understanding what can you do yourself to look after your body. I will say that kind of fell to the wayside once I started in law, because the stress of that kind of took over. When my parents were diagnosed, so in 2019, my
24th, this was it?
Yeah, so it was just before my birthday. It's in the July, my birthday's in August. My mum literally out of the blue was diagnosed with a brain tumour, and it literally went from she'd been having tests and stuff for a while, and then suddenly you get this diagnosis, and very quickly it was right, you're having a biopsy, this whole process, and within a week you are suddenly thrown into the world of oncology and tests, scans, biopsies, just the most crazy thing that you can't get your head around. But when you're told it, it's everything's just how do we get to the next day, and it feels like it's going to be short term. And then my mum was given originally 6 months to live. She ended up living with it for 3 years, which was incredible. So you just have this feeling of you're just on high alerts the whole time. And 6 months after my mum was diagnosed, at Christmas, my dad was then diagnosed with lymphoma. So, and this was at a point where my mum was starting to really deteriorate, and then suddenly my dad had also had cancer, and it was a real oh my god moment. I think when you're in it, it's so, you're just on survival, like you're just, how do we do this, and you sort of leave your body and somehow you're still functioning.
I was actually going to ask you that, like at the time, did you realise the stress that you were in, or was it just pure detachment?
Like total detachment. Like you just are so, I could talk about it in the same way that I could talk about something at work, and I couldn't really get emotional. The first like few weeks I did not stop crying, but then I think then the survival and the detachment kicks in, and literally I could tell anyone about it like it was I was talking about the news or the weather that day, like so numb to it. And it's just how your body, how your brain is getting you through the situation. Yeah. Like it's so awful, but it's not letting you process how bad it is. So actually, my dad being diagnosed, it was like, okay, yeah, what's next? And it was just sort of like, we move on to the next thing we've just got to get through, as opposed to, there was no like big breakdown moment, because you just actually can't have that.
I actually can't even imagine receiving that news that your dad has just got it as well.
It was a really, I mean, that was a story in itself. It was, we had to take him to A&E on Christmas Day, which if anyone has been to A&E on Christmas Day knows it's like an episode of Benidorm, EastEnders, everything like mixed into one. It was, I mean, fascinating. We were there for like 8 hours waiting to be seen. I mean, it brings the whole, like every walk of life into an A&E, and we were just sat there like, what is happening? So all of it was surreal, and I think it was such a kind of, we didn't know how to react to it, because it was just like, surely not, but also, okay, how do we do this? And what was quite interesting about it was my mum's treatment was more sort of slow and steady. With lymphoma, it's a very like quick and aggressive. So they were on two very different trajectories. My dad would end up in hospital for sort of 6 weeks at a time for stem cell transplants, and he was just in the hospital, especially once COVID hit. Whereas my mum, it was much more at home and like going through it. Like I was giving her chemo, most of it was tablets. So like I was administering all the chemo and stuff. So it was two very different types of treatment, even though they both had cancer.
And you were still working a lot, and this was over lockdown, am I right?
Yeah. What do you know? And I say this with like such caveat, if I recognise like how difficult a period of time that was for a lot of people. Until COVID hitting, I was getting the first train back into London on a Monday morning, going into work from Monday to Friday. The seat I was in at the time was working until like 2 a.m. Then getting the last train home on a Friday to then be home at the weekend to sort of look after mainly my mum. My dad, thankfully, was like, he still didn't need like a lot of caring for. It was more making sure they had all the meals and all of that cooked, and I was like literally just cooking like 5 meals that they could then have the rest of the week. So when COVID hit, it was like, or when lockdown hit, it was this big blessing of like, okay, one thing's been taken out. Yes, I still have to work, but I can be at home. Yeah. And it was like the biggest like breather of like this, not this constant stress of like backwards and forwards, and I just got to be at home and be looking after them. Which comes with its own challenges, but yes, we're still in law.
Oh my goodness, I can't even imagine the realities of, and then you were the eldest sister, weren't you? So yeah. I suppose you probably took on like a lot of the caring responsibility.
Yeah, you become the parent in a really strange way. And I will say, like, my dad as well, he did so much for my mum. Never have done any of it without my brothers or my dad. Like, it really was like all of us had to like bundle together, and we all had different roles in what we were doing. Like, my brothers could do a lot more of the physical stuff with my mum that I wasn't able to do. I was doing more of the sort of cooking, looking after the house side of things, the medication. So we all had, and my dad was very much like, when he was not in his treatment, was like obviously a huge emotional support for my mum, but also so much of like everything else. So we all had our like pieces in it. But I think the weirdest thing is you go from being the child to the adult. Like suddenly it's like you're reminding, I was reminding my dad if he'd taken all his medication. I was giving my mum like her injections, and like you become the adult in the sort of dynamic, even though you're supposed to be the child, which I think for anyone that is going through caring, like that's the hardest part of it, that you sort of lose your childhood feeling in that sense.
I can only imagine that like the pressure that you felt on your shoulders. Do you like look back with so much compassion for your younger self?
That I do. At the time you don't truly, like you just don't realise. I didn't realise what I was under, and I really, now I'm like, oh my God, and you can have moments when I'm like, how did we do any of that? And especially when memories come up of like, I mean, there's one example of, only because, you know, the new iPhone thing of the pictures coming up.
Oh, yes.
And this picture came up where we were taking my brother and I were driving my mum to go see my dad in hospital. And I was driving down the motorway and one of the tyres blew. And so then we were stuck on the side of the motorway and my mum's mobility had really deteriorated, but we had to climb over the barrier on the M40 in like it was like driving wind and rain. Horrendous weather. We must have waited for like an hour on the side of the motorway waiting for the AA to come. And it just is like those memories come up and you're like, how did we do that? And like, how did we get back in the car and like drive back home and like all of these things, but you just do in this really like, and it's why I always say our bodies are incredible because the amount they will get you through is so strong. And the protection, when people say I'm numb or I feel that emotion, actually sometimes recognizing that like your brain is protecting you is really important because we almost want to force ourselves out of it and maybe want to feel it. But I know if I'd felt anything in that time, I would have crumbled. If I'd crumbled, I couldn't have been there for anyone else. So there's pressure and you know it's a lot, but you can't feel it in the same way at all.
Was any of your MS flaring up over this time as well?
Yes. February 2021, I had it was the biggest flare-up I had had. So I'd had like little niggles and then I woke up one morning and I'd lost the vision in one eye, and it was like, oh yeah, probably should have caught on to this, may have happened. But it was basically a combination of burnout and my MS flare. So that was my like first burnout. And yeah, then suddenly it was like, I'm in hospital needing treatment for this. It just was like a big spiral. But again, I then took that actually was my like realization that I needed to take time off work. So I ended up taking 6 months off work to look after my mum, but I also needed it for my recovery. It was that long because I wasn't really able to recover with how much my mum needed, but it was again, sounds so weird to say that that's a blessing, but like I really think it was because it gave me a reason you have to be able to legitimize things to yourself, and I wasn't able to give myself the permission, so to speak, to take time off work, because also you don't know what's happening, and so you're kind of just like, I don't want to jump the gun and take time off work now, like what if mummy like is actually fine for the next like few months or something. But it was my like wake up call of like, oh no, you can't keep managing all of this. So yeah, it did flare up in a big way.
And you spoke about how like you were just in this like numbness, like survival mode. Was there a pivotal point? You've obviously gone on to like leave law and pursue holistic health coaching. Was there a point where you thought like, I need to make a change? Or was it just like a slow transition? And was this after your mum had passed, or?
Definitely a slow transition. So my mum passed away in 2022, August 22, and I went back to work with this like, I can now be a proper lawyer. Like I'm no longer a carer and lawyer, I'm just going to be a proper lawyer. That's when I did my qualification. I did my studying because I knew I needed to fill the caring void. And I was like, how much I've learned around health, and like I'd done so much of my own research to be able to support my mum through nutrition, because that was like, okay, the one thing my mum could enjoy. She could no longer walk, she couldn't really speak, she lost the ability to do so many things, but her love for food never went anywhere. I mean, literally 6 o'clock on the dot.
That's where you get it from.
She looked at me and be like, wine. And I was like, okay, it's that time. Glass of wine was ready. And then it was all around dinner, and like food for her was so important. And so I'd done so much of sort of my own research, both for my MS and my mum. And I was like, okay, let's like make this a bit more official and like really study this properly. So that filled the caring void. But it was then this really slow burn of like, I basically a year later, I say a slow burn. It was, but someone had to then stop me. So a year after my mum passed away, my aunt was actually living with us at the time. And it was like 2 a.m. on a Friday. They'd all been out for dinner and I was still reviewing, I think it was like, it was like 60,000 documents we had to review that week on trains. And she came downstairs into the kitchen and I was still doing it, and she was like, what is happening? And I was like, I'm reviewing documents on trains. She was like, no, bigger picture, what's going on? And she was basically holding a mirror / bright light on me of like, you are no better than a year ago. Like, you've not worked through grief. Actually, after you lose someone, and especially after the caring role sort of ends, you feel like, okay, I'll get my life back. But I realised I didn't have my life back. I still wasn't seeing friends. I still wasn't going out. I was still really unhappy. And obviously you're dealing with grief, but there was also a layer of like, I wasn't living. And so my aunt sort of did shine this light on like, it's been a year and you're not any better and you're heading back down that path of burnout again. So that was sort of a pivotal moment, but it had been a slow burn of that. And literally that was the Friday night. I told my dad the next morning, I was like, I'm quitting. And then the Monday went into work and was like, conversation, I'm going to leave. I didn't really know particularly, I knew internally what I would do, but I didn't really voice it because it was like, let's just make this transition first. But because of seeing clients as part of my course and loving that, I knew what I was doing, going to do with it. But no, it was like, I knew I was very unhappy and in a bad space and something needed to change. And it wasn't going to be, I mean, I could keep buying a handbag or booking a holiday, but it was like a lot deeper than that.
You needed the introspection and gosh, like, especially, I'm sure from what I gather from you, you're not the most impulsive person anyway. So the fact that
bar our tattoo conversation.
Just the fact that felt so right.
Yeah.
It's like such a, like, just says there was something
completely.
That.
Completely. So like you really hit the nail on the head there, because I am an overthinker and it can take me so long to make decisions. But with this one, it honestly was like someone gave me a golden ticket to feel better, which was going to be like my own work, but it was like it's when you know you need to make a change, but you need that external person to go, it's okay to do it now, and give you that sort of realization. And that's why I think like the people around you are so important. But it was like, I'm not impulsive at all, but that was like, there was no second guessing it or anything from the start.
I think it also just shows, like, as you mentioned before, you just were going through the motions of you graduated, you'll do law. Like, I think so often we just live life on like the paradigms of society and what is normal and what is expected of us, but actually very rarely do we take a step back and think, who do I want to be? What sort of life do I want to lead? And it sounds like your auntie was that for you. She like pushed you to take that step and to reflect. And I think so often we do just get caught in this conveyor belt.
Completely. Like, the autopilot is so strong in so many situations, and I was journaling, but I mean, God, that was a tick box exercise in itself. It was like writing the same thing every day, like not actually connecting to it at all. But it was my aunt kind of saying, you didn't go through all of this to feel like this. And I think that was such a realization. And you know, a big part of me, and I think anyone going through grief might be able to relate to this, there is a part of you that doesn't want to feel happy and doesn't want to let go of it all, because that feels like you're losing a part of the person who you're accepting has happened. And it was actually relatively recently, it was probably towards the start of this year, once I was in my flat and like just so feeling really happy. And I said to my aunt, I was like, I've realised that being happy, it's okay to be happy. And actually for years, from 21 of like, I guess always there being a medical side to things, when someone asks like how you're doing or what's going on, I always had a very negative response to that, because ultimately there was a lot going on. But actually I think it's for the first time for a very, very long time that I can remember, where it's like, oh, it's okay to say you're good, and it's okay to actually, we all say we're okay, but to actually mean it, to be like, I actually am really happy, but then actually realising it takes so much time. Like, I broke the autopilot in 2023, that must have been. It was sort of October 2023, left the end of that year. But it's only the start of this year, so 2025, like over a year later, that I can truly say that like, you feel like you're actually happy again. So it does just take time. So even breaking the autopilot takes time.
I think you speaking about how it's okay to allow yourself to feel joy, and actually you don't always need to be pursuing growth and like development. And something I struggle with so much is I'm not taking a step back, or I'm not taking my foot off the pedal to do something that will bring me joy. Even we were talking about retreats there, and a big part of me, I know subconsciously, is like not booking this retreat, because to me I'm like, well, that's taken away from time in the business, and like I haven't earned that yet. and the fact that actually as humans we are here to experience joy.
Yeah.
And we are just starving ourselves of that.
And the biggest lesson I have learned in my business is the best things come from when you take a step backwards, not from when you're sat at your laptop. One of the biggest hang-ups, I think, from a corporate career is that in our minds we see work being sat at your laptop or being like on in a business sense. Mm-hmm. But actually, so Zoe's retreat that I was on, those 4 days, I came back with more ideas, more inspiration, and having had the most incredible time. Last week was so productive because of that. Because I came back and I was like, right, I'm ready. If I'd not taken those 4 days, maybe I could have got the same level of work done, but I wouldn't have felt the same doing it. And it actually probably would have been me like very tired, like forcing myself on my laptop. But actually, the best ideas come when I'm on a walk, not listening to any music and just like walking around. But that goes against the corporate mindset of like working is on my laptop. And it is like sometimes it does feel like you're stopping and taking a step back, but realizing that actually for most of us and for like 9 times out of 10, that's how you project yourself even further forward, by taking that step backwards, as opposed to it feeling like you're behind.
Yeah.
But social media, like I'm so guilty, like I love watching everyone's like day in their lives, what their schedules are.
Yeah.
I love seeing those things. But it then can make you feel like you're not doing enough. Actually, something a client and I were talking about this week is writing a to-done list. So instead of your to-do list, the end of the day, writing down everything you did. Because so often we can just look at things that you didn't manage to get around to. And it can be as small as like, oh, I didn't return that H&M parcel. But actually, if you look at how much you did in that day, you would be so proud of yourself, but we're not, because we're looking at the to-do list. So it's sometimes really reframing of like, actually, I know I get so much done, and I'm not going to get sucked into everyone else's sort of their schedules. Because for me, success now, if I can fit in an hour walk in the park with no headphones, it'd be a sunny day and be surrounded by nature. Actually, I'd rather look at that as like that was a more productive hour than me sat on my laptop trying to write an Instagram caption that actually might not be coming to me that day.
Yeah, and you're so right about when you take the time out, when you come back, things come easier, because I feel like when you take the time out, that's when you're connected with yourself, and then you can start channeling inspiration as opposed to intellectually trying to produce work. It's coming like from a higher self, or I'm sure we'll get into all of this, but it's coming from a place of ease and not force. But I'm so guilty of this. I was speaking to Annie yesterday and saying, even when I look at like the vision boards I create, it's full of all my work goals, my ambition, my like I want to become from a business perspective, and it's nearly like an afterthought of the other aspects of my life, even though deep down what is most important to me than anyone is like the people in my lives and the person that I am beyond just work. But yet I think as well, being whenever you are intellectual and you're in school and you're rewarded for that, then you link your worth to that, so then that's just what you chase.
Completely. And like I always joke, like it took me a good, I would even say like 6 months after leaving law, when someone asked what I did, to not say I used to be a lawyer. Like that was my like immediate, because being a lawyer was my identity, it was my status. And it does take quite a lot to realise that actually you never lose that. Like anything that you've done has always got you to where you are today. And so like I will never lose the fact that I was a lawyer, and actually everything I learned, as we've spoken about, like all those skills now really feed into my business today. So actually I get to see it as like, I still am a lawyer. Like this isn't going to take away from any of those things, but I also get to pursue other things as well. But I think it's so easy to come up with the work goals. And that's how the autopilot for me was so strong. So it was like, well, I just think about law and I think about my next email and like to do and what I had to go through from a legal perspective, that I didn't process grief. I didn't think about how I actually felt. I was saying I really want to be in a relationship, but was I ever dating? No, because I was sat at my laptop working. And actually, did I need to be sat on my laptop to the extent I was? No, but I also didn't want to do anything else outside of it. It was like, sometimes it's an easy escape. It's an easier emotion to deal. The stress of work is easier to deal with than our like bigger emotions.
Yeah, and actually the distraction of saying I'm doing work is praised.
Yeah.
As opposed to actually you're overworking, that's a negative thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy how we get so much of our worth from the things that give it to us as a child, and how we actually take that throughout our lives, even though it like no longer serves us anymore. And it's like okay to appreciate. What I've learned myself is that did get me so far, that like allowed me to escape a reality that I wanted to escape, but that's not going to serve me going forward to my new goals and like my next chapter, and it's okay to close that door.
And I had a period where I realised from like growing up, I used to love like being able to tell my parents of like, I got 10 out of 10, or I got a gold star, or I got an A star, like whatever it was, like at whatever stage, saying the success that you had and then getting that praise. I had a period last year where when anything really good happened with work, I wouldn't let myself tell anyone for a week, because I was like, I need to celebrate this myself before I tell someone else, and let the praise be from them and not from myself. And it sounds so trivial. It was so hard because I'm so conditioned to being like, this happened, oh my God, everyone like, look. But then you realise the celebration is because also other people's reactions to something affect how you celebrate it too. So if someone's not as excited about it as you are, then I'd always be a bit like, okay, maybe it wasn't as great.
And very rarely somebody will be, because they aren't the one experiencing it. And funny you say that, because whenever we went for coffee over Christmas, you told me this beforehand, and I was so guilty of that. The minute I made something like work with my business, I was right home, right my sister, and because I wanted to share it with them and like share the excitement, but I would never stop with myself with it. And then you told me this, and I realised it was such an awareness moment for me, and I started implementing it. And now I have a rule where I wait at least an hour and I allow myself to experience the joy before I talk about it. And it's actually so lovely.
And the weirdest thing you also notice is that when you then tell someone, you actually say it in the way you want to say it, because you've sat with it and you've really been like, I'm so proud of myself for doing this, or I'm so happy this has happened. And then when you share it, it just lands so differently because you're more grounded in it all. But it does come from that, like, we're very used to sort of that external validation of things. Same with posting on Instagram or like posting something somewhere. Give yourself the time to celebrate it first, and it really does change how it then feels.
And I feel like it's just an opportunity to experience the joy of it twice. You get to experience it with yourself, and then you get to experience it with somebody else.
So true.
So as I mentioned at the very start, something that I just think is just so special about you, and it's already came out so many times, but I feel like your perspective on life and the ability to constantly find something positive amongst like the darkest of times is something that comes to you and like is so clear in how you live your life. And whether this is from grieving from your mother, caring for your parents during that really difficult time, to even your own journey with MS and how you've like transformed, as I mentioned, your pain into your purpose. Have you always been like this?
No, I really don't think so. I actually was talking about this with a friend the other day. I was a really negative person.
Really?
Yeah, I really had, or maybe negative, maybe a bit harsh, but I was very pessimistic. Like, I didn't see the good in things. If something was happening, I immediately was like of course that always happens to me type mentality. And I really think my parents being sick and watching my mum change, she really was like she was the glue that held us all together, but she was just one of those people that like lit up every room she walked into. I always say, whether it was like a builder that had been once or someone to come fix the boiler, like people just remembered my mum, and she really had this like energy about her. And when she got sick, physically so much changed. She was unrecognizable. She wasn't able to, she literally couldn't move from her chair, and she wasn't really speaking. But these carers were coming in to do the sort of personal side of the care, and they'd leave me be like, oh, we just love your mum. And admittedly, my brothers and I looked at each other and be like, but she's not speaking, like, we really don't, are they just making this up? But what it made me realise is that like people's energy is so important, and my mum's, even though so much externally had changed, nothing changed her energy, and she still had that sort of magnetism about her, even though externally so much had been lost. And it just made me realise of like there is so much more to complaining about a train being late and being like, this always happens to me. Because if my mum could sit there not being able to get herself dressed, not be able to fit into the clothes that like clothes for my mum was like such a huge part of her identity. Not being able to wear those anymore. Like we celebrated, it was her 60th, and I'll never forget, my mum wore, for all of her big parties, she always wore Alaya dresses, so the very fitted, like, tight dresses. And we were talking about getting ready and, like, what she was going to wear, and she was like, hey, we're going to get an Alaya. My dad and I looked at each other and we were like, there is no way we will get you in an Alaya dress. Like, that's just not going to work. But she just had this, like, there was nothing was going to change, like, how she wanted to be. And I think it wasn't even like a conscious realization that it changed how I saw life, but I think just over those years and seeing my mum go through that, and it just made me realize, like, the smallest things can bring me joy. Those 3 years, the only thing that made me happy, like, genuinely, was a walk from home, and it was this, like, certain walk through the woods, and you came out, like, up this hill, and suddenly, like, the sort of space opened up and you're just surrounded by trees. And I'd walked to the top of that hill, and yes, it feels great to get to the top of the hill, but it was honestly like my whole body just like did like this big like exhale. Also had my dog, so that always helps. But it was just like, there was like a happiness place. And I suddenly realised of like, okay, that is all I need to be happy. I don't need the rest. I need my energy, and I want to, I think the strongest sort of legacy or way that my mum can live on is that energy that she gave to people and that feeling, how she made other people feel. If I can have like a percentage of that, I know that's her in me. And so taking that and being like, okay, all I need is a walk to make me feel happy. I don't need the big gestures. I don't need a big holiday. Those things don't actually mean anything to us. It's the smallest things in the day. So I can wake up on a sunny morning, and I know it all affects us, and we're just like, yes, we feel better. But I'm genuine. It's like everything else could go wrong today, and I can just focus on the fact it's sunny and be like, it's good. We're all okay.
Well, first of all, you have 100% of that about you. And what that just made me think was like, what a beautiful passing gift in those moments of her suffering that she was able to pass on to her daughter. Like, isn't that the ultimate lesson, to be able to give somebody? And actually, that is what it means to be human, to be able to use our suffering to help others. That is what being human is. And I think so often we internalize into like the victim mentality, like, why are we going through this, like, why me? It's not about us. And actually we have a responsibility to look for the positives, because I believe that all of our suffering is so that we can transform to help others. And it's actually selfish to live in this victim mentality. Your mum's ability to show you that, even whenever she couldn't speak, but it was through her energy, and that, I just think that is the most beautiful gift to hand down to somebody.
There was no gesture, there was no like big quest that she was on to run a marathon with a brain tumor, or like, and those things are incredible, but she really did, I think, change all of us in some way by going through it. And God, you have the days where you feel like, why is this happening? And the victim really comes in when you're like, none of this is fair. Of course those come up, but it's when you take a step back and you do look back and you're just like, there was so much of it. Like, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now had I not gone through it. But I also, and it sounds so strange to say, I needed to go through this to break myself out of the person I was, and to actually live, and to actually see a bigger reason for life and want to enjoy things. Like, I didn't really care about doing much, and I really, as I said to you, like, just followed everyone else's, asked me what I wanted to do. It was like, please don't ask me that, just like tell me what you want to do and we'll do it. That was how I was like living. So I needed, in the weirdest way, to go through this to be able to almost step into my own purpose and find my own voice in things again.
Yeah, I was listening to a song earlier on, and it just made me think whenever I was preparing for this podcast, and it just struck me a line, and it was, is it crazy that I'm grateful for all of this pain?
Yeah.
And it struck me so much because honestly, I am so grateful for like, my difficulties have been nothing touched on that, but I am so grateful for the pain that I experienced, because it made me into, like, it gave me traits that I like about myself, and it made me so much more compassionate for others, and all of the things I'm most proud of came from that period of suffering.
And it really makes you see where you are holding yourself back, or where you're being a victim. Like, it does put a mirror up to yourself of like, actually, do I like who I'm being and the energy I'm giving off? Because it does make you realise those things quite quickly.
Yeah, and going on from this is something that when I was reflecting on something that I was so grateful that it gave me was I was always like raised with spirituality, or well, I was raised in a religion, and I wouldn't say I necessarily practice religion now, but going through those periods of darkness, the thing I'm probably most grateful for is like the spirituality that it gave me, and the faith and the trust that there's something higher and something that we can trust beyond just our own control.
Yeah.
And how that has helped me in so many aspects of my life. And I know I've spoken about this before, like how spirituality is so like fundamental to us.
Yeah.
And I'm interested, have you always had spirituality in your life, and like what does that look like for you if you do?
So we grew up not hugely religious, but it was always a part of our lives of sort of being christened and marriages happening in church and all those types of things, but not hugely in the sense of I didn't really connect to it. And then I think when it was something I definitely turned to in like if I like losing grandparents or when my mum was diagnosed, like I got comfort from like going and sitting in a church of just like, I guess it's actually the silence that gives you, but not necessarily connecting to a certain thing. And then after my mum passed away, actually no, I think it was more after I left and started sort of my business side of things, and realising that I had just blocked my mum out in the sense of like I didn't really want to think about her too much, then I got too upset. But I did always talk to her, and this is, I'll kind of preface this of like, we're going to sound absolutely batshit crazy at points of this, but I would always go to the cemetery and I would sit there and I would just have a conversation about nothing, like it literally be about the most random things, but I would be talking to her, but not, it was almost to be able to have a conversation. It wasn't really that I knew I was talking to my mum. It was probably about a year ago, and a incredible mentor of mine, Carly, that you know, she said, you need to connect to your mum more, because every time you connect to her, that's when you light up. And it really made me realise that if I could turn those years, if something positive can come out of that, which I already knew, like I was already in feeling so much better, and I was like, wow, leaving is like the best decision I've made. So I was like, something positive did come out of something so painful. There is something bigger guiding this. Like there is a trust in, whether you want to call it God, universe, spirits, whatever it is for you. There's something else at play, because if something good can come out of that, then even on those really bad days, I can kind of connect to that a little bit again of being like, something good is supposed to, if this isn't the right thing for me, then it's not supposed to happen, because like there's just something bigger happening here. And I really started actually when I meditate, like letting myself picture my mum again, and like conversations we used to have, like faces she used to pull, or like really connecting back to her and bringing that into my meditations. And again, it does sound so crazy, but I mean, the first few times I was like a absolute sobbing mess, but the difference it has made in my faith in like everything is going to be okay is like unmatched, because ultimately I know my mum is up there. I always said my mum was like guiding like what I do now, but I don't think I'd really connected to it properly in the sense of like, you say that, but like, do you really believe it? What does it mean? But every day, like I meditate and I think about my mum and I think about conversations and I ask for, on those hard days, it's like, just show me something is right. And that's when we all have synchronicities and signs that we all connect to in different ways. For me, it's a pink sky. That was when she passed away. We were all in different places, but for like that week that she passed away, there was just a pink sky every night. And then they went. We had to wait quite a while for the funeral, and then the night of the funeral there was the most like incredible pink sky. And now just there are days when like you really need that like boost. Or when I moved into my flat, I looked outside, something that was like most incredible pink sky, I then just know that I'm like on the right path, or like something is right. Or even if it's not that I'm doing something, it's like, okay, I know I can get through this because mummy's still there, she's guiding it in some way. And as I said, to some people this will sound so crazy, but just knowing that she is still there and you can still connect to her, and like I can still have a conversation, I can still have her like wisdom and guidance in some way. Ask me how it works, I have no idea, but the faith and the belief in it is what gets me through. It's what like gives me the drive each morning to be like, right, we get to build this together, we get to do this together. I always say like I wear her jewelry or something and I'm like, this necklace is hers, and I used to hate it because whenever she put it on me, I thought I looked like Vicky Pollard. Now I love it. And it's, but one of those where like, it just feels like she's there with me, and I just took it deeper by starting. Actually, I will say, if anyone is interested and doesn't think I am totally crazy, Gabby Bernstein there's a 10-minute meditation that's connecting with your spirit guides. And it is one of the most beautiful meditations that, the background music is so calming. Whatever it is that you believe in and you want to connect to, that's what this meditation is for. So I use it to connect to my mum. You can use it to connect to God, to the universe, to whatever it is that you believe in. But it transforms how you feel, or it definitely does me. And it, yes, can make you sob some days, but other days it's like the power from it as well. Sorry, that was a really long answer to your question.
I love every aspect of that. And when you were like touching on the signs with the pink skies, like, I think the more that you get this evidence that they're there, which comes from asking, it comes from the asking. Like, sometimes it's in the darkest times when you're just like, I surrender, like, I don't know, like, give me a sign, and then you see it. And then the more that you surrender, the more you ask, and the more that you receive these signs from something higher, it gives you more confidence that there is something. And for me, mine's always sunflowers. And it actually comes from the quote that came from, even in the darkest, or you cannot, let me write it. I wrote it down. It's literally my favourite quote. It's, happiness can always be found even in the darkest of times if only one decides to choose to find the light. And it reminds me of like a sun, and that's where the sunflower came. And I remember before I decided to leave my job, I was just like, I couldn't decide, and I was like, is this an ego decision where I'm just wanting to quit because this is like hard, and I'm like, or is this the right thing? And I remember listening to this, I was going back and forth, and I didn't want to say to anybody because I wanted it to be my decision, and I didn't want to be influenced towards it or away from it. And I remember just being like, I don't know. And then I listened to this podcast, and they said, if you don't know about a decision, don't make any. I think I've said this story before, but don't make any, and just pray for a sign, surrender. And I remember saying, I think, like, it feels so right, the idea of quitting. And this was impulsive of me, like, in terms of I didn't have like another job to jump to, and that is so out of character for me. As I said, I'm a planner, I'm a type A person, and I said, okay, like, if this is meant to be, this was on Sunday night, like, show me a sunflower. And I walk into work the next day on Monday morning, and my reception is just covered in sunflowers.
No.
This is a sign, I don't know what it is. And it would be like rude for me not to do it. I was like, okay, well then I have to.
Workers for themselves.
But it was like that reassurance that it gave me that I am on the right path, and like, this is it, and I don't need to worry, like, I'm being guided. And like, even moving into this flat, like, I was apprehensive about it because it was going to be like an increase in rent, and I was already like unsure about everything that was happening in my own life, and it just felt so right. And then I moved in with Annie, who's my housemate, and we actually didn't know each other beforehand. We'd met once for coffee, so it was always going to be a risk. And Annie comes in, and we were like unpacking her stuff, and she lifts out her key rings, and doesn't she just have like this huge, like, honestly it was massive, like sunflowers hanging on her keys. And I was like, this was the right thing, and this has been the best decision ever for me. The more we have those signs, and like, it just shows us like they're with us. And I always like love the quote whenever they talk about grief. I think it's from a book, and I remember it was like, I've written it down here as well. They were talking about somebody, it was an interview, and they said, do you miss them? And like, how do you live life without them? Because you used to do everything together. And the lady's response was, before we spent 90% of our time together, but now I spend 100% of our time together. And it's actually, their presence is with you all the time.
It's something I could not agree with more. Like, it is such a, I actually, like, it sounds really weird, but when my mum would say, like, you take them for granted. Like, we would argue, we would fight, like, you'd be annoyed about her coming in and trying to clean the house or something, and I'd be like, it's not messy, and like, you'd have the arguments. Whereas now, I mean, it is looking at it from like a very rose-tinted glasses perspective, but now I just have the guidance side, and I just have her with me, and it's like, those little things are the reminder that she still gets to be here. And like, I think the hardest thing, because it was such a long time her being sick, and not, well, I guess she was sick for a lot less time, but so many of the memories, like the really fresh memories, are when she was not the mummy that you really want to remember because she was so unwell. So I'm really forcing myself to actually like connect back to the like mummy before she got sick and like those moments. And that's the part that I had just really blocked out and wasn't letting myself remember. So it's helped me process grief. It's helped me be able to talk about her in a way that I want to talk about her, and like I'm always so open about it. Like I can talk about her till the cows come home, because I think that's the saying.
Yeah.
I always get them mixed up. Because it's just, and it allows you to do, or allows me to do that and feel very connected. And like, I know you mentioned Dior, but that for me, so much of my work is bringing my mum into it. But it was something that has been in the diary for a long time. And when the fall collection came out on the 15th of, what month were we? Must have been 15th of April, yeah. It came out and I knew it was a Japan collection, but I suddenly, the whole runway was surrounded by cherry blossom, and all of the clothes had cherry blossom on them, and cherry blossom was my mum's favourite flower. So much so that she had a tattoo of it. My brothers have tattoos like linked to my mum, and they all have cherry blossom on them. And this collection came out, and it was like, oh my god, like this was already an event that was very connected to her, but now like this collection that we're celebrating is covered in her favourite, and it was such a moment of like,
this is crazy.
And then the dress I wore was covered in cherry blossom. You're just like, I know she's with me doing this event and like in this room in a different way, but she's right there like supporting me through this. And it's, as you said, it's those little signs that mean nothing to anyone else, but to you they completely change your energy. And ultimately, when we think about any of these things, like we said, like energy is so important. Energy dictates everything we do, from like how we feel in our work to actually what you put yourself up for like how you speak, how you hold yourself. And so the more we can cultivate that really positive energy, if it's the signs for you, if it's linking to that spirituality, like for me, that is how I shift my energy. I just need to listen to either Coldplay, because that was my mom's favourite.
It's Skies Full of Stars, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I listen to that song, or See a Pink Sky, and there are other things, the cherry blossom, like just, I'm like, okay, she said, we've got this.
I just like, and whenever I hear other people experiencing this as well, it just makes me so happy, because I'm like, I know they get, like they're feeling what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah.
And I feel so fortunate. It sounds maybe bad to say, but like I feel so fortunate that I have these angels looking over me now, because I can't even imagine having to live life without it.
Yeah. And as I said, people can feel really disconnected from this and think it's absolutely crazy. But everyone needs their niche. Everyone needs the thing that gets them through. It might be that you love tarot card reading, or it might be that you love meditating or breathwork. Like everyone has a practice.
Yeah.
And when you find the thing that really helps you through, stick to it.
Yeah.
Because you know it's working.
Every morning I love doing the meditation I do is, she mentioned, it's only honestly like 15 minutes. It's on the Deliciously Ella app, and it's called Recenter, and it's with this girl Jessica, and it talks about like, today I'm choosing my energy, and what energy do you want to embody? And I always, like, I'm quite a visual person, and I always visualise myself as like smiley and radiant, and just being like, and then she starts like, you are in your body, you choose your energy, and it's actually going out intentionally being like, what energy do I want to bring to the world today? Do I want to bring my sadness? Do I want to bring like anger? Or who do you want to be?
And some days you need to sit in the anger, you need to sit in the sadness, and other days, and actually it's like you're deciding that before you let the external come in.
Exactly.
And letting the external dictate actually how you feel, which so often is what we do. But it's like creating that space of being like, no, I want to decide this myself. I'm not letting the tube dictate how I'm going to feel.
And as you mentioned about like rose tinted glasses, like so often we feel like this toxic positivity where it's like, I need to find a blessing, I need to find a blessing, but actually we don't always need to find it there and then, but trusting that we will find it.
Yeah.
Whenever you went from this, I wanted to pivot on to, making this transition that you went through. You obviously like lived from this like high cortisol, high stress, like living in survival mode, and that can be addictive. Like the cortisol is addictive. To then choosing to live a more intentional and aligned life, pursuing something that is passionate for you. Did you find that transition hard? That it's such a 180 in an approach to your lifestyle?
Yeah. I think I'm still in it at times. I don't think it's I think it's a work in progress and always will be, because I think we are so wired to thrive off the high alert feeling, and I can still find myself in those days, particularly now I've got an aura ring, that's not helping tell you when I'm in there, but it is, I actually think you go quite full circle. I think I suddenly was like, oh my god, I've got all the time, I'm so chilled, I'm so relaxed, and I went so far that way of like not having any structure really, to actually realizing I thrive off a structure. I don't want to be doing a commute, I don't want to like have to go into an office, but I do need a structure. And so it's finding that balance that like lets you have the structure, but also being okay that like some days are going to be high alert, always on days, but it's then the recovery afterwards. And I think that's where, talking about like toxic positivity, my biggest bugbear around the conversation of stress is like, I'm a stressed person, or like you have no stress at all. And it doesn't let us see that there's a middle ground where like actually it's good to have your stress days. It's good to have those days where like you feel a bit on edge, but you get so much done, you feel really accomplished at the end. It's then how you're recovering back from those, and that's the important part. So I think the biggest transition I noticed is like, I now can see in myself when I've pushed like, or I'm about to push myself too far and I have to take a step back. But I still fall into those days, as I said, where I'm like, oh my god, that was like a day in law. And but it's like self-inflicted, not someone else sending me the emails, like me doing it myself. And it's then having that real like intentionality around, okay, fine, we move on from that. I'm not going to berate myself for it. How do I then like come back from it? And actually the intentionality piece comes in of like, what's my recovery from this? How do I move something around to actually be like, okay, I can't do another day of that. What do I need to do to switch this? And that's for me, that's been the biggest shift, because before it was just like constant 100%, and actually didn't want to come out of it because it was easier to be stressed. Whereas now it's like, I want that to be my, like, not my constant feeling. That's like a one-off every few days, fine to have, but we come back from it, and practices around that are really important.
Yeah, and I suppose deciding I'm going to be in that state now, as opposed to it being your default state as well. Like, I thrive off like the thrill. Yeah. But actually, I want that to be a conscious choice whenever I go into that state, and knowing I can go into that state when I need to.
Yeah, because actually, there's an amazing study that it was in the US, and basically it took pairs of individuals. It's all around your perception of stress. And ultimately, if you see stress as a positive, so something that's like a real challenge, there's that like, oh, I thrive off it changes the impact it has on your body physiologically. Whereas if you see stress as a threat, so something that's going to like stunt your development, or it means that you're like, oh, this is really going to work against me. In both instances, you go into your stress response, but what happens in the body is so different. So the people that see it as like a positive thing, and you can really see it in like corporate environments. And I think anyone listening, you'll probably notice it now, like you can see when someone sees it as a good thing, and actually how they feel versus people who are like, I just don't want to be stressed. And what happens is the people that see it positively had what's called greater cardiac output. So basically more oxygen is being pumped to the brain. So you think clearly, you're making decisions better, you're more creative, and actually you get something done. And their recovery was a lot faster. Versus the people that saw it as a threat and were like, this is going to stunt me, I don't want to feel stressed. They went into the stress response, but ultimately what was doing, their blood vessels were constricting. So it was raising their blood pressure, and that over time is where we get those sort of longer term impacts from a health perspective. And it was taking them longer to recover from them. So a big part of the work I do with clients is actually to delve into their perception of stress. Because I'm like, okay, I know on those days when I am going to be stressed, I just need to see it as like, right, let's do this. Yeah. Challenge mentality, bring that in.
Get it excited.
Yeah, and use it as like a positive thing of like, let's get this done.
That is fascinating.
And know that actually that's having a different impact on my body than how I was in law, which was like, I don't want to be stressed, but I'm stuck in this stress, and stress is so bad, and it's such this like threat victim feeling versus the positive.
So that just makes me think of something like, I was talking to Annie last night about how things aren't inherently good or bad, but it's our perception of them. And when you mentioned that, I was like, I have a positive perception of stress. I think it's like exciting and like thrilling, but my perception of rest is negative. Yeah. And actually stress and rest themselves are inherently neutral. Yeah. But it's our perception of them. But that is fascinating hearing how they actually like impact the body.
And it's such we all have bad relationships with rest. Like, I'll put my hands up, I have a bad relationship with rest. I find it really hard to stop and do nothing. But if you are going to have the challenge mentality around stress, you need to build the same mentality around rest and be like, right, how can I get excited about this? And rest doesn't have to be sequence.
Yeah, so true.
So many different ways of like doing it. But if you are someone that's like, yeah, love the stress, love the challenge yourself on the rest part as well. Don't just let yourself, because the stress one's easy. You've got that, like, that comes naturally. We don't even need to think about that one. But the personal challenge is then like, okay, and particularly with a lot of my clients are already health conscious, like they have really good routines, they know what they're doing. The biggest challenge actually is to realize that you don't need a 10-step morning routine or journaling and meditating and breathwork before you go into work. Actually, what I get them to do is break the wellness rule book, and that's harder to do.
That's so hard for me.
Stick to the wellness rule book. It is easier. I have one client who, even in the weekend, like, she doesn't get up super early at the weekend, but is still up, say like 7 a.m. Then has her like, wants to do like a to-do list for the weekend, wants to like have all the things she gets done, goes to Pilates. It's the most, on paper, most beautiful morning routine. But actually, her challenge the other week was to, even though she was not going to lie in from like a sleep perspective, but was to lie in bed and do nothing. To wake up in the morning, not rush up out of bed, to actually give herself, I said half an hour. I wanted an hour, but we settled on half an hour. To just lie there, to let her mind wander, to think, to give yourself space, because the get out of bed straight away, go make your coffee, get your notebook, journal, breath work, like, it's keeping your mind racing, it's keeping your mind on. But that half an hour in the morning is actually an amazing way to rest, but that's the hardest thing to do.
I feel so
You're
sick
looking at me.
now.
I was like, might be your challenge.
In the week, I get up at 5:15 and I treat to myself on the weekend is 5:30 because to be fair, like, I love getting up early. I love the sunshine. I'm like, oh, it's like, I just can't wait to go up and like get about my day. But the thought of being able to lie in past like 6 o'clock like cripples me.
Do you know, I would genuinely challenge you to do it, and it doesn't have to be that you're asleep. Stay in bed till 6.
My gosh.
Purely because when rest is seen, like when that rest is out, like it's harder to do, we have to push ourselves out our comfort zone. But because getting up in the morning is praised, we're like, oh, we feel guilty for that kind of rest. Having a nap in the afternoon is quite a normal thing. We don't feel so guilty for that. There's something about the morning piece that people find really, really hard. Yeah. And when you start doing it, this sounds so strange, because when I started doing it, I was like, I'm actually being soft on myself. And it was one of the most calming things I did, from the sense of like, oh my God, like I'm not being mean to myself. Because my going to Pilates, my meditating, like I love those things, but they are also a task, and it's something that, yes, is wellness and is very mindful and wholesome, but like it's still something you have to do. Forcing yourself to lie in, you have this feeling of like, I'm being really kind to my body right now.
It feels weird.
Yes.
But I love that you like your whole perspective on health, because I think there's so many toxic narratives. Like I'm definitely fall victim to them as well, around improving our health for aesthetic purposes, for productivity purposes, for biohacking. But actually your whole message is just like, how can we improve our health to be happier, enjoy life a little more? And I think that is actually really rare to find in the wellness space, because a lot of it is based on that. And it kind of like hides itself. It's like a disguise, but the underpinning nature of it is, how can you achieve more and do more?
Wellness, performance-based wellness, has now become the escape of like, oh, I'm not going to burn out because I'm doing these like productivity wellness tips. Yeah. But actually, they can be just as much a cause of your burnout or being under a lot of stress as your work can be. My whole thing is like, literally take what you're doing now and you just get to feel differently while doing it. You want that success, you want that career, you want to set up your business, you want the side hustle. You can have all of those things. As I said earlier, your body is incredible. What we can withstand is amazing. You just have to give yourself the resources from both a nutrition and a lifestyle perspective to actually be able to handle it. And when we look at it from that angle, you're like, oh, so I can do these really small changes and actually look after myself to get the success I want. It's not holding you back, it's not stopping you. It's getting you to, I would say, you're redefining what success feels like, because we're conditioned to thinking success is you're on your laptop till 2 a.m. and it's the achievement side. Actually, can success be, you get all of those achievements, you get all the accolades, the titles, the success, financial recognition, whatever it is that you want it to be, the relationship, the family, but you get to enjoy it while you do it. I reached every level in law and would get incredible feedback. How did I feel while doing it? Empty. Now, how do I feel when a client resigns, or someone signs up, or someone sends me a really lovely message saying, I loved your post today? That I can like sing off the rooftop and be like, that makes me feel so good because of how I already feel. I'm not chasing the success, but you have to sort of do this like full circle to enjoy what you're doing. As I said, that doesn't come without like, there are still nights where you're on your laptop till 2 a.m. But it is really just looking at it from a different angle of like, how do I want to feel while I do this?
Yeah, and also like, how do I want to get there? Because I think as a society, we want that quick win.
Yeah.
We want to reach there the fastest way possible.
Yeah.
And actually, would I rather get there by burning out and working, say, 12-hour days for 6 months, or would I rather get there in a year and a half and enjoy my life in the way?
Yeah.
And it's okay. Cora, I'm speaking to you. It's okay to enjoy the process, going back to like finding the enjoyment again, and it's okay for it to be a slower process if you will enjoy it, and actually that's so much more sustainable.
And I think, look, I'm always going to be biased in this world, in this sort of answer, but there's also an element of outsource in all areas of like, I have to outsource things in my business because ultimately I know I'm not the best person to do that. When it comes to these wellness things, we add to our stress because we're cherry picking. We're taking every little thing we've read and we're trying it and we're seeing what works. And it's like this constant, you feel like you're on this hamster wheel. It's a hamster wheel of work, a hamster wheel of life, and then a hamster wheel of everything I'm supposed to be doing and reading about. And I've just read that this is bad for my cortisol and that this is bad from a nutrition perspective, and I'm going to try all these different things. And that's why nothing sticks, because it's just this constant bombardment. We actually have to take a step back and be like, what's happening in my body? How am I feeling? What's coming up for me? And what do I know works for me? Those are the things that like we have to get so clear on, because when we're listening to all the external, we're never going to get to that root of what's happening, and then it just feels like this constant and never ending like, oh my gosh, I'm just never going to get there. Like, a client comes working with it, we see results quickly because ultimately you know how to do the work, we have all the information, but it's bringing that into a way that actually feels right for you. But we're always just so bombarded with it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think when you mentioned about cherry picking, so often we think it's like, it's going to be the influencers, it's going to be this like new health craze, it's going to be the class, it's going to be everything, when actually, when you spoke about beforehand, what is actually going to reduce your stress is sitting by yourself in your bed for that extra half hour. It's actually tuning in with ourselves. It's choosing to have a slow yoga practice instead of this 10-mile run, because that helps us tune in. And we try to outsource and look for all these answers, but actually we have it all inside of ourselves.
And I will say, it's so unique because for someone else, the run will be the best thing they do.
And sometimes it's both.
It's such a, again, it's that nothing's good, nothing's bad. We are so black and white with things, and it's why one protocol I write for a client is never going to work for another client, because everyone is so different and their lifestyles are different, and actually their symptoms are different. And ultimately, like, when we think around, I mean, caffeine is always such a big one, or fasting, those are completely down to you as an individual. What are your current symptoms? What is your cycle like? What is your sleep like? That will dictate whether something is working for you or against you. Yes, there are broad principles that like we think about, but ultimately we have to understand your body as well.
Yeah, that's actually so interesting, because I know there's like so much around fasting and like having coffee on an empty stomach and the impact on our hormones that this can have, particularly for women. Obviously, like, a lot of the studies are done on men. And do you like kind of want to dive into some of the science behind those? Is fasting good? And as we said, like, it can be, it's nuanced, but do you want to explore some of those topics? Because I think as well, the narrative around it towards women is towards a restrictive mindset. It's like, fast so you eat less, or you have a smaller eating window, when actually that's not what it should be about.
No. The hard thing is with the science is that ultimately you will find science to support it and science against it. The same with everything. My approach when someone comes to me is always, okay, how is your sleep and how is your cycle? Because those are two things that really tell us what is going on under the surface from a stress perspective. If you have really irregular cycles, you have really bad PMS, fasting is not going to be the first tool I bring in, because ultimately, or a tool I bring in at all, because ultimately we need to be looking at the health of your cycle and your stress levels. Fundamentally is a stress on the body. Whether that is a positive stress or a negative stress comes down to your current baseline, but also like how you approach it. So there are many different ways that people fast, but actually the thing that people sort of forget is if you think about the weekend, you not so much because you lie in. A lot of, don't lie in, but a lot of us do sleep for longer at the weekend. You've naturally fasted without any feeling of restriction. Say that you had dinner at like 8, 9 p.m. on the Friday. You lay in on a Saturday until 8 a.m. You had a really slow morning. You might have a coffee. You're very calm and relaxed. Actually, holiday is a good example. You sort of then like stroll down to a hotel breakfast at maybe it's like 9, 10 a.m. You've naturally fasted for over 12 hours, but at no point has your body told you fasted because you are calm and relaxed. When the fasting feels like I'm waiting for this time to come, that's when you shouldn't fast, because ultimately you are pushing your body out of its comfort zone. And look, there is always a time when like doing that can be very beneficial. But on a sort of overarching level with the people and the clients I work with, we're all under a lot of stress. How do we reduce that is making sure restriction is not the piece that comes in, because when we're stressed, to restrict is the easiest thing to do in all areas. It's like, I'm going to do loads more exercise and I'm going to not rest as much. We're restricting the rest. You want to, I always say, and this is a really weird, sometimes quite weird, but like think about how, if you say you're visual, think about how something is working in your body. Think of restriction as like your whole body is tensing. When we're stressed, our whole body is tense. You then have restriction, everything tenses up again. And so nothing's really going to flow very naturally through your body. And so then it's going to be really hard to feel calm. You are going to get bloated after you've eaten because your whole body is tense. And having that visual representation of it, and I will always ask a client that of like, okay, when you think about fasting, because it is normally a client saying, I want to try intermittent fasting. So we break it down of like where that's come from. When they think, like some people be like, oh no, it's like quite an exciting challenge, or like, I actually think it suits me really well because this is already my structure, For other people, they're like, it'll be like, I don't want to do it, or I actually think this will be quite difficult. And they do have this visual of, I will have to like force myself to wait those 2 hours before I eat something. If that's your mindset around it, it's not a positive thing.
I always think like that is just the fundamental of, do you have an abundant mindset or a restrictive mindset? Because one person seeing this is like, this is an opportunity to growth for like, and then going back to your perception of it is positive, so then your body will probably react in a positive manner. Whereas if your perception of it is, I need to fast to restrict, that is such a lack mentality, and then your body's response is going to be in that stress state. But again, the fasting is probably inherently neutral.
There are incredible benefits to fasting from an autophagy perspective. Actually just we very rarely let our body just pause and recover and actually do its processes. There's so much that happens in between the sort of out eating windows that we want to happen in the body. So there are benefits from that perspective. People see cognitive benefits. If you are wanting to lose weight, there are some benefits there. But ultimately, it depends on you as a person as to whether that benefit comes in and what you are currently going through. And so we always have to take a step back and paint that bigger picture and not just go, okay, I'm ovulating, so this is the time of my cycle when actually fasting, or maybe not, so in your follicular phase, fasting's good in this phase, that's what I've read, therefore I'm going to fast in this stage. Actually, how does that make you feel? Because like, all of our cycles are so different. So there's always something you can tie it to, but I think you always have to take a step backwards and be like, does this work for me? Coffee's the same. I'm really sensitive to caffeine. So even though I love a coffee, I don't drink it because I'm really sensitive to it. It does raise, like, I do feel more anxious on it. And so I know it doesn't work for me. There'll be someone else where coffee on an empty stomach, they don't and genuinely don't notice a difference. If that is you, then that's probably not the thing we need to focus on. It might be something further down the line that we look at, but it's not the key thing that's going to be a needle mover. You changing that, if it's what makes you happy in the morning, it's not the thing that you really have to focus on. Actually, it might be that you then don't have breakfast until 2 p.m. and we need to look at that first. So it's finding a balance between the enjoyment piece and the science, and that's what I do, of like, I want to make sure there is a level of both, because we can go so strict on the science, but if you then find that a stressful routine, there's no point in us doing it.
Yeah, and again, it's just perception, because it kind of makes me laugh, because my cycle has never been healthier than whenever I used to have my coffee at 6 a.m. before a CrossFit class.
Really?
My cycle was to the day, on the dot, perfect. It's just funny because it is just, I loved CrossFit, so I had this like positive association to it. I loved waking up for my morning coffee, and like I didn't have this perception of, oh, like coffee on a stomach. Well, to be fair, I always had a toast. But I was like, coffee early in the morning is a bad thing, so I shouldn't do it. But it's actually like, I never even thought like that. I had such like, oh, can't wait for my coffee. And actually, it is just tuning in into yourself. But yeah, even like CrossFit there, like I loved it and I used to wake up excited for it. It's extremely like high intensity like workout. Not all the time, like obviously like they tailor their programming. But yeah, my cycle was so healthy then.
And I think it is creating that we are so disconnected from like what works for us, and that's what I like. I feel like a private investigator sometimes to like, I mean that sounds extreme, but like that is almost like the biggest thing we're trying to find when I'm working with people of like where is the enjoyment being lost. And the piece when you said around abundance mindset, when it comes to any of these things, does it feel nourishing or does it feel restrictive? If something feels nourishing to you, and that could be coffee first thing in the morning, if that genuinely is something that you find nourishing, then that is something to focus on and be like, okay, but getting very clear and specific on that you're not tuning out and ignoring things. There is a balance, because quite often we don't think something is affecting us, but the more we delve into it, we start noticing different patterns. So there's always, that's why I say about the investigating side, like there is a delving into to make sure when you say, oh no, I love that and I have no symptoms, that is actually what we mean here. But it's that nourishment piece of like, okay, if you think about going to a workout in the morning, does doing that on an empty stomach feel nourishing? Or does that feel like a punishment in the morning? For me, that feels like a punishment.
Yeah.
And it's not that I have a massive meal before I go to Reformer, but I will have my cacao with MCT oil and collagen. I can't do a workout without having that first, because then I know I've given my body some fuel, I've given some nourishment before I go do my workout. I also know if I had a protein smoothie, I would do the workout 10 times better. So it's kind of tuning into those things of like, where for you does the nourishment come in, and bring that into every layer.
So complex, but like that is why having coaching in your life is like actually so important, because sometimes you do need that outside perspective looking in to like gain your
and to notice how you're actually feeling about something, because that is when we talk about autopilot, symptoms are like the biggest things we normalize. And someone can be like, oh yeah, I got home and like I literally felt like I had to eat the fridge, but they like brush that off, and it's like, hold on a second, let's go back to that. They've not even seen that as like they think that's a normal part of getting home.
Yeah.
It's like, but hold on, where's that coming in? And we have to like backtrack. And so many things, like we say these flyaway comments and we don't realise actually that they're not the norm, because we've just normalised so many of these symptoms.
Gosh, it's actually such a fascinating topic. No wonder why you're like, I just want to research it all the time. I know I've been like talking for ages, but I have two other like kind of areas I want to quickly touch on. Your love for food, you obviously spoke about that. Can you talk about how we can nourish ourselves through food to improve our health, and what are like the fundamental principles that you tend to like advise your clients on?
I'll start with the fundamental principles, because I think once you have these sort of, I always call it an equation. Once you have the equation of your food, we can then talk about like the joy part of it, because that's then the important part. Fundamentally, I always say prioritize protein. We as women do not eat enough protein. We think it's all to do with muscle, bodybuilding, going to the gym, but protein is essentially broken down to amino acids, which is the building blocks for everything in our body. Every process needs an amino acid. We need tryptophan, which is an amino acid to create our happy hormones, which then goes on to create our sleep hormone. So we need all these things from a biological level to actually function in the way we want to. And when we're stressed, protein is one of the first things we burn through. So it is all about building your plate around protein. It's then thinking about the colour diversity, gut health side of things. To get really, I always say like get super specific so it's easy and like you have something to take away. It's things like, can I add some pomegranate seeds? Can I add cacao? Can I add olive oil? I mean, if they had a number one fan, I would be one of them. Overload our cupboards with supplements. If you buy a good quality olive oil, the benefits that can come from that and including that in our diet is so broad. And I say, like, take a tablespoon of olive oil like you would your fish oil tablets. Those things have value and those things are great, but olive oil is we overlook it so much, but the anti-inflammatory compounds in there, the polyphenols, the plant benefits we get from there are so nourishing in every way for our digestion, for our gut, our hair, but it's so simple we overlook it. And it's sometimes those things where it's like, okay, we've made food so complex and actually something that's very scary. So I really like to simplify it in that way. So any meal you're having, drizzle of olive oil over the top, you know you've given yourself a real like beneficial boost, or given that meal a boost in a really beautiful way. Different herbs and spices, the more of those you can bring in, the better. Like rosemary, saffron, turmeric, they're all so beneficial to our health. If you love tea, keep trying lots of different herbal teas and things that you can bring in, and it's just an easy way to bring in diversity. Healthy fats are obviously important. The one I say from like I love meal prepping. Like, I will talk about meal prepping for so long. The best one to do is, can you cook and cool your carbohydrates?
Oh my gosh, I heard this the other day.
Yeah.
Is it the resistant starch or something?
Yeah.
And I notice a difference whenever I do this, and my digestion is so much easier.
It's one of those, you're going to be eating potatoes anyway. You're going to eat your pasta anyway. You're going to eat bread. Put your bread in the freezer. Cook your potatoes ahead of time and have them in the fridge. It just makes your meal is done so quickly. But that resistant starch that it builds is, obviously, as the name suggests, they can't digest it, so it feeds the gut microbes, and it then helps create short-chain fatty acids that are really anti-inflammatory, which is very beneficial for your gut health, your body generally. When you said around like my love of food, ultimately MS is an autoimmune condition. Everything I do is to try and reduce inflammation as much as I can and keep that as low as possible. So the more anti-inflammatory ingredients and foods I can bring in, the better. And just these very simple things that take what I'd be eating anyway, but actually just like supercharge the benefits of them is such a, and again, back to that intention piece and being very aware of it. When you know you have those potatoes in the fridge, and so often we already have them there, when you know the benefits of what that's doing for you, it's different when you eat it. You're like, God, I really like nourished myself today. Like, I looked after myself today because I had those potatoes that were already cooked, and so they created more short chain fatty acids, and that's anti-inflammatory, and it's very beneficial for my gut. Those types of thoughts build a very healthy relationship with food, because you start seeing it as a real beautiful thing you can bring in, and what can you add to give you those benefits. And when you're intentional around it, of like, yeah, when I have that like olive oil over my salad, think of all those benefits I'm getting. This is really going to help my hair, and like, this is really beneficial. And look, it's not going to be one thing that changes your diet completely. It is a compounding effect of all of it. But these small tweaks that you can bring in, especially when you're busy, say you've had the worst day, but you're like, oh yeah, I nailed my olive oil today. That's a win. And like, in a world where you're like, I can't look at my nutrition, that was then a positive.
That's so interesting, because I think a lot of the narrative, and like a lot of women would finish the day and be like, oh, I ate less today. Yeah. Whereas actually it should be, oh, I nourished myself more. Yeah. And I loved whenever I made the shift from like I nourished myself more, my body feels better today than it did yesterday. You know, getting the wins from a nourishing perspective, as opposed to tying the wins and the success to something that's in a lack perspective.
And it's really, I always ask clients and myself of like, what did I used to love eating when I was younger?
Yes.
And how can we take those, like for me, bolognese, stews, like I love, like I have a pressure cooker and I use it every single day. Like making beef stews, like very like using like the fattier cuts of meat to make like a very comforting stew, a bolognese, something that is lots of broth, like very warming. That is when my digestion is at its best. Not only because of a lot of health benefits in there, but because of the comfort it brings from like a, oh my gosh, this is so delicious. If you try, I don't get lettuce. Never will. Don't get a plate of salad. I know people really do. And I just, if you give me a bowl of salad, I will eat all the interesting parts and I'll just leave the lettuce. I don't see the point of it. Give me like a beef stew with lots of like root vegetables in there. Like that's my heaven. But that is so unique to all of us, of like what we enjoy eating. And it's connecting back to that of like what used to make me really happy and how can I recreate that now? Let's bring in some more like plant points and benefits from a nutritional perspective, but still be the flavors that I love. There's a really incredible study around like our heritage foods, so what our sort of grandparents grew up on, and actually, and further back as well, but like those are the foods that you're going to be able to digest easier. Yeah. If you watch the Blue Zone documentary, all of their diets were different. Yes. But each of their diets worked for them because it's ultimately what has been in their cultures for years and years and years. Yeah. So it's sometimes connecting back to that of like, what did I always used to eat? What did my family always used to eat? Where are all the spices? What have I lost connection with? And bringing that in a way that then is, there'll be some people that love curries versus some people that love salads, some people that love pasta, some people love noodles, like, you know, there's all these different things, but it's bringing those in within the equation of like then focusing on your protein, getting in your healthy fats, getting in those nutrients, the diversity, but making sure there's that love for it as well.
I think that whole like ancestral point is so interesting, and I've been like reading more about it. But it's funny because like obviously I'm Irish, so my ancestors, like, I don't know, lived off carrots and potatoes. And I love carrots and potatoes. And my digestion, whenever they're cooked, honestly, they're like my favourite thing. But it's so interesting. But as you mentioned, the blue zones, and it really aligns to your whole perspective. It's just like, nourish ourselves with real whole foods and just like taking a nourishment and a nutrient first approach.
That whole food like side of things, ultimately our body knows how to process those things, and that's where we have to think about it. Like if you're thinking of the load on your body and how much work your body's having to do each day, how do I make it easier? Oh, I'll make sure it knows what everything I put in my body, it knows what it is, and it's not quite sure what that ingredient is. And while that is like an ideal of being like, I'm going to only eat whole foods, the more we can focus on that, the better. Yeah. And understanding the food matrix of like how a food is made, how a food has been processed, and what that means in the body in terms of like, whole foods are more satiating than something that has been processed. If you are really if you realize that actually your hunger signals are completely out of whack, focus back on the whole foods, because your body knows what to do with those. And that's how you tune back into your hunger cycles, what you enjoy, all of those things again. This is like, I can say that and people will be like, but I don't have time. I work with the busiest lawyers, buying the people in corporate that have founders that have no time in the world. Cooking is faster than them getting a delivery.
Yeah.
And it's really reframing your approach to cooking. When you have the smart ways to do it, it's so quick, it's so easy, it's delicious. Yes, it can take a bit of prep beforehand, but that prep also gets to be the switch off you do at the weekend. Yeah. It gets to be while you're watching something on TV, like you do it with your partner, you do it with your family. There's so many ways to change that narrative, and it's something I'm maybe you can hear in my voice, very passionate about, because we've lost connection to that. Like cooking for me got me through my mum being sick. Like, I used to watch my mum cook all the time. A glass of wine, 6 p.m, she was cooking dinner for everyone. And so when she was sick, I wasn't having the glass of wine, but she was sat at the table and I was cooking, and that became our evening routine, and cooking got me through that. It gave me a structure and it gave me a release. Some days didn't have the time, but we did it anyway. And it gets to be a very therapeutic thing as well if you create the space for that in a beautiful way.
And again, it's like, do I see cooking as this like to-do list thing, or do I see it as like my favorite thing is coming home after work, putting on my pajamas, I put music on the TV, and it's the ritual of going into the kitchen, cooking myself this like lovely colourful like my sister's always like, Cora, your meals are so complex, like, and they don't have to be, but I have like 7 different vegetables but I love it, and I love the like exploration of it, and it's the joy that comes from cooking.
Light a candle, put some music on. Like, movement has become this like, I walked 10,000 steps, I did my Pilates class, I did a HIIT workout. Put a good song on and dance around your living room while something is cooking. The benefit that will give you is 10 times stronger than any HIIT workout you can do. From you're moving your body, you're getting your lymph moving after a day of sitting at your desk, but you're also having fun with it. And I think that's it doesn't have to be complex. Pick one vegetable, a protein, a flavour, you've got your meal together. Delicious.
Yeah, it's just the fundamentals of it all, isn't it? Well, I'm going to close up, but just beforehand, I want to share, because I learned this just whenever you came in. Can you quickly say why everybody is putting their legs up the wall? Because I am fascinated by this.
It is honestly, it's probably why I'm single. Right, it's not why I'm single.
You're not single. That's not what you were saying beforehand.
But I cannot go to bed without putting my legs up the wall. And it started from I have my red light mask. And I don't even know why I got into doing it, but basically, from a scientific level, the act of the blood rushing from your feet down to your heart is very calming. It takes you from your sympathetic to your parasympathetic nervous system, which helps you sleep. But for me, when you are lying with your legs at the wall and I then hold my red light in front of me, I can't be on my phone, I can't be on my laptop. And it is 20 minutes before I go to bed, where it's like, everyone thinks a wind down routine needs to be a really long time. It actually doesn't. Like, if you are intentional with something, it can be 5 minutes. If you I do 5 minutes of lie with my legs up the wall, this is what calms my body down, this is how I sleep, it will help you sleep. Intention is everything. But for me, it's like, I put my phone on airplane mode, that's me done for the day, and I then lie with my legs up the wall. It's when I process the day. It's when I think about things. What do I want to do tomorrow? It's when I actually come back to myself, because I can't do much else when I'm lying in that position. So it has the two angles of like, on a physical level, it's great for lymphatic drainage. It really helps if you're feeling bloated. It is such a good one to do. I do look batshit crazy while I'm doing it with the red light. Then usually have a dog lying on my chest, because she loves the red light as much as I do. So she's lying on my chest, I've then got the red light and my legs are up the wall. So you look crazy while doing it, but it's the only thing I can be doing in that time, which is such a positive thing that just makes you, it's like, okay, I can now wind down from this and feel better at the end of the day. And it's when, like, from like a grief perspective, it's probably when like actually I was able to grieve something. Right. After Dior, it had been this like whirlwind incredible, and then you have the realization of like, oh my god, my mum's not here. And I was only going to process that when I got to the legs being up the wall stage of the night, which is also not the position to be crying in, but there we go. But I urge everyone to try it, because it has been my non-negotiable for about 5 years, and the nights I don't do it, I notice, my aura ring notice.
I'm going to start. I'm going to do it. I'm going to finish off with some of our closing questions. Yeah. So, what are some of the top books that you recommend? Anything, they could be about anything.
Two, and I think I said one of them to you before. Unlocking the Quantum Woman by Shamina Taylor.
Amazing.
It is one of those where if you just want no nonsense, get shit done advice around manifesting, around business, around your life, this is the book. Like, I love Mel Robbins, I love Gabby Bernstein, but it can sometimes feel a bit out there. This is like no hold bars, no nonsense. Here you go.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
It's good for a type A person.
Yeah. Second one is Forever Strong by Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, because the way she writes and her research changes the way that you will view food, muscle, and the importance of looking after your body. And I think every woman should read that book to change your relationship with how you see nourishing yourself.
Yeah, I've listened to podcasts with her before. She's super like educated. So next one, what are you most proud of yourself for?
Oh, that's a really hard one. Do you know, I'm going to go back to the admitting that I'm happy. I think I was going to stay too scared of saying that. So yeah.
I love that, and that just made me think, because whenever I sent out the form asking people like their opinions and quotes, and one of the questions I think was like, what does your dream life look like? And your reply was, I'm living my dream life.
Yeah.
And I remember reading that, and two things from it. I was just like, I love that somebody feels that happy in this world. Mm-hmm. Like, how beautiful to know that people feel like this. And it also showed me that when I do pursue the things that I'm passionate about, I don't need to worry, because you pursued what you were passionate about, and look where it's got you. It's got you to a life where you're living your dreams. And it showed me that I don't need to worry, because I will get there too when I follow my heart. And it was such an expander for me. And so I love this. Okay, so what does a successful and happy life look like for Grace?
Feeling at peace and grounded. You can have the biggest things happening, but as long as you always feel grounded in what you're doing and at peace, success.
It's like the meaning of life, isn't it? Okay, so what are your big dreams and aspirations for your future?
Do you know, I was like, oh my god, there's so many. But they all went into work. So that was a really interesting thing. I obviously want to keep expanding and growing and having the opportunities that I have had already and taking them so far. But I think it is actually making sure I stay grounded in that, because, as I said to you, I can fall into the stress head so quickly. And so my biggest aspiration is to be able to do this without burning out.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a really good piece of advice. I was saying, I went for coffee the other day, and I was just journaling, and as I mentioned, like, I get a lot of my, I suppose, worth from the fact that, like, have I been productive today? And just going on from your point there was, I actually want to start shifting from like have I been productive today to have I been more loving today? Have I been more abundant today? Have I had more faith and more confidence in myself today? And changing my metric of, I suppose, going back to success, away from these like work ambitions to being, am I just like a kinder person today than I was yesterday? Okay, so I didn't tell you this one because I wanted to get like your fresh perspective.
Oh no.
What would you say to little Grace if she was sitting where I am right now? If like she was sitting in this chair and you were talking to her?
That is the most beautiful question. It's going to be okay. Because I think when you go through things, you feel like, as I said, I was in such a victim mentality, negative side of things. Or there's something the other side. You will get through it. There's something the other side.
There's always light at the other side as well. Going on from that, what would you like to hear from your older Grace? What is a message that you would like her to say to you? Because I think that is what she's saying to you.
Then I will stick with that. No, what would I say?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I think
you can.
And you did it. You found your peace. You found your happiness. Yeah.
Even that, like, doesn't that just bring you a sense of peace?
Yeah.
What would you tell a young girl who has dreams and all these ideas, but just like is lacking the confidence in herself to go out and pursue them?
Timing is everything. When you know it's the right time, you'll do it. And I think so often we think we have to take a plunge and jump right now, because if I don't do it, I'm not being confident, or if I hold back, I'm delaying time. I'm a huge believer in timing is everything, and things happen when they're supposed to. If there is a reason why you're not jumping or something is holding you back, listen to that, because there might be for a good thing. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Let timing, you'll know when it's right.
Yeah, I love that. What is your favourite quote or a mantra that you live by?
So something that my best friend told me when my mum was diagnosed, and it's much more on the religious side, but I think it applies whether you believe in God, spirit, universe, whatever it is. But it's that basically fundamentally God will never give you a challenge that you are not ready for, that you can't stand up to. And she read it to me from the Quran, because that's her religion. And it's something that stuck with me every single day going through things with my mum and my dad, of like, I know I can get through this, because otherwise I wouldn't be challenged with it. And it just gives you, on those days when you feel like, how the hell do I do this? It gives you the hope. And I still use that now, of like, on just like a slight bad day, I'm like, whatever challenges come, I can handle this. And it can be big, it can be small, but it's something that has really, since she said it to me, has like guided me every day.
That's so profound. I've never heard of that before, but it also just makes me think like God, universe, source, whatever energy, whatever you choose to use, is an all-knowing presence, and they know more than us. And actually, if they know we can handle it, if they have confidence that we have the strength in us, then we must have it in us.
Yeah.
That's a really beautiful piece of advice for somebody to give you as well.
Yeah.
What is a charity or initiative that you feel like is doing really good in the world and you would like to give it a shout out to?
There were so many. One I really want to add to the craziness, my aunt was diagnosed with breast cancer at the same time as my parents. And there's an initiative called Lobular Moonshot Project that she is a huge part of, because she was diagnosed with lobular breast cancer. It's the second most common form of breast cancer. It's up to 15% of breast cancers. But it doesn't come up as a lump, or very rarely is a lump, and it doesn't show on mammograms. Yet there's very little funding and research into it. So the Lobular Moonshot Project is all about gaining political support to get the funding to research and get the information that we need around this type of breast cancer that, as I said, is up to 15% of breast cancers. There's just not enough known about it. And so my aunt is a very active sort of member of this project that is doing incredible work to shine light on this form of breast cancer that is caught too late. My aunt was very, very lucky, but so often it is caught too late.
Wow, that is incredible. I didn't know that before. I'll definitely put the links to that in the bio. So I'm just going to close off now. Thank you so much for your time. And as I said, whenever I think of you, my favourite quote comes to mind, the one that I shared about how happiness can always be found even in the darkest of times, if only one choose to look for the light. And that is just like, I feel like everybody will get from this whole conversation is like, you have transformed your life to be purposeful, and you've found light amongst the darkest. And if you can do it, we can all do it. We can be expanders for each other. And just going off that as well, I think so often we think, if you have a calling on your heart that you want to pursue, or a passion, we internalize it and think it's about us, but actually it's so much greater than us. It's not about us, because you choosing to pursue this passion has helped so many people, more people than you will ever realise, in ways beyond that you'll realise, whether that's spiritually, physically, mentally. And we have a responsibility to follow the callings of our heart, because it's not just about us, it's about the people that will. I also think there's some people in life who they don't realise how much of a light they are for others, and I think you're one of those people. I think you're such a special person, and I hope that you can start to see this in yourself, because you are a light. Yeah, I think this is you. People around you and everything that you're creating and using your difficulties to help others is just so inspiring, and again, it just is the fundamental of being a human. So thank you so much for your time and everything that you've shared for myself and for hopefully everybody listening. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh my god, literally giving me goosebumps.
Oh, thank you so much, Grace.